Hello, Rational Roundtable. This is Dark Tango 78 here, continuing the conversation with you on the many faces of God. In your latest video response, you made 4 points, and as I understood it, those 4 points were as follows. First one was you challenged my example of a global mistaken belief. Number 2 is you mention or suggest that I am moving the goalpost with respect to the debate, even though you're okay with that. Number 3 is you present something that is that you believe is not accountable by atheism. And number 4, you try to provide an account for why we have this miscommunication. And these two last things correspond to my challenges of the previous response. So I'll try to address these in order. And let's just begin with the first one. So your challenge to my example of a global mistaken belief. Here you mentioned the flat Earth example. I had used the one about the Earth the sun revolving around the Earth rather than the flat Earth example, but the flat Earth example is just as valid. So let's just go with that one. And you say something very curious here, which is that this was a false belief based on ignorance, which I think is a kind of truism, because anytime anyone has a false belief, it's because they are ignorant of the truth. If they somehow knew the truth, they wouldn't have the false belief. So it's truism to say that it's somehow not a valid global mistaken belief just because it was based on ignorance. The same could be said about the God belief, that it's currently based on ignorance. I could easily imagine a future in which everything that is currently attributed to God now is later explained, and then a future you would say, oh, well, this global belief of God was just based on ignorance because we now have all the explanations that we thought we didn't. So I don't really think that. I think the point stands about it being completely possible to have a global belief that is mistaken. So saying everybody can't be delusional, billions of people can't be wrong, is not a good reason to justify a belief. Secondly, the moving the goalposts regarding the debate, even though you're okay with it. So as I understood it, your original video was meant as maybe I'm wrong, but this is how I understood it, was meant as a refutation of an atheistic objection from the plurality of beliefs. So the atheist argument that there's so many beliefs, there can't possibly be a consistent God behind them. And so you were trying to square that, basically. And so my counter was, well, the atheistic explanation accounts for this observation of the plurality of beliefs. So if you're going to introduce an alternative explanation which has more entities, you should first say why the atheistic one is not, the atheistic explanation is not valid, and then make your own hypothesis internally consistent. So those two things correspond to my two challenges. So the first one, motivate the hypothesis of a consistent God behind all religions as necessary, and secondly, as internally consistent. So then you proceed to address these two things, and the first one is you try to present a few things that are not accountable by atheism, and you present the existence of the universe. So why does the universe exist at all? The beginning of the universe, presenting the problems of infinite regress and traversing an actual infinite, neither of which I believe are problems, but rather than get into that, I'll just say the following. Because essentially you not only have to provide something which atheism cannot account for, but explain how theism does account for them. And so this is something I find very curious in your argument, and it brings up a question that I've had for a while now that no theist that I've encountered has been able to answer, at least to my satisfaction, which is, you posit that a conscious, intelligent entity can exist outside of time, and you say yourself in your stance, you say changing would be a direct contradiction to existing outside of time. Well, I don't see how a consciousness and an intelligence, a person, can exist outside of time. Because a person, an intelligence, a consciousness requires change. If something does not change, it's basically crystalline, it's fixed, and I don't understand how something fixed can be a person. So unless that can be explained, I see this as a huge flaw in the theist hypothesis of the beginning of the universe and time. And fourthly, you account for the miscommunication problem by appealing to the problem of free will and genuine love. And here I'm going to refer to a video by TheoreticalBullshit called Nonbelief and Peekaboo, which I'll link to in the sidebar. And towards the end, I think it has a very good objection to this solution, quote unquote, of positing free will as explaining the hiddenness of God. But I'd also like to throw in my 2 cents of a very short positing as to why I don't find this explanation satisfactory at all. So imagine a scenario in which a man is looking for a wife, which of course he would want for her to love him freely. And so imagine that his reasoning was, since I want her to love me freely, I am not going to ever communicate with her. I am not going to make my presence clearly known. I am not going to talk to her directly. What I want is for her to love me without ever being sure that I even exist. Does that sound reasonable to you? Do you think that man would be acting rationally? When you extend this to God, this does not sound like the plan of a maximal intelligence in my regard. Now, before you object, saying that maybe God does reveal himself to people and the ones that don't see him aren't looking hard enough, I'm going to link a very recent video by Agnostic Man 77, in which he is basically asking God to appear before him. And you could object to that by saying, well, he's doing it on YouTube and God could not reveal himself because then everybody watching would also see him, and etc. But you can easily imagine somebody making a similarly impassioned plea in the privacy, in private, and how many people in a very similar situation go unanswered, essentially.